Maybe I'm just getting old, but it's hard to remember a time when Football Manager didn't have a list of roles per position. 15 years ago though, roles were introduced to Football Manager 2010 as a brand new feature, replacing the iconic arrows and sliders. As time moved on, the game continued to evolve. Many roles have changed over time, some in how they act, and some in how they're named. Limited, defensive, no-nonsense defenders, I'm looking at you. New roles have continued to be added to the game as real-world tactics have evolved, but back in 2016 there was a slightly more understated addition. For the first time, the game included a visual indicator of the mentality each role would have within the current tactic. Before we talk about that, maybe we should address what we actually mean by mentality. Mentality is an instruction that is applied to the whole team, and ranges from very defensive all the way through to very attacking. This isn't the be all and end all though, as formation, team instructions, and the roles used will all help to determine how defensive or attacking a tactic actually is. A better way to look at mentality is to consider it a confirmation of how much risk you want your side to take. A very defensive mentality doesn't mean that your side will never look to score goals, it just means that they'll be very cautious in their approach to doing so. So we know that mentality helps to dictate playing style, but how exactly is that accomplished? Mentality affects almost every team instruction with a sliding scale, such as tempo, attacking width, and passing directness. As you would expect, the more defensive mentalities make the default settings of instructions more conservative. Passing will be shorter, tempo will be slower, and width will be narrower. This of course is reversed with attacking mentalities, where a tactic will be faster, more direct, and wider by default. Out of possession instructions are also affected, with the height of the defensive line and line of engagement changing, as well as the default pressing intensity. The most extreme mentalities also have the ability to lock off portions of certain instructions, as selecting them would be a huge contradiction to the mentality itself. For example, the game will not allow you to play in a very attacking mentality, but also employ time wasting, as this is not an effective attacking strategy. So we've seen how mentality can affect the team as a whole, but how does that translate to individual players? Each player role selected in a tactic will have an individual mentality, but it will not necessarily be the same as the team's mentality. This means that some players in a side will be afforded more license to take risks and go out to win the game, while others will need to be more cautious in order to provide balance and stay defensively solid. A player role is just a set of hard-coded player instructions that dictates how a player should behave in each phase of the game. We associate certain roles with certain mentalities. For example, a complete wingback is considered by far the most attacking role for a defender. However, they will still act differently in different systems, as no player role has its own set mentality. This isn't to be confused with the duties that can be assigned to roles. Even though they are called defend, support, and attack, this doesn't necessarily mean that this is how the player will behave in every tactic. Although they are titled similarly to mentalities, a duty's bigger impact is in changing the hard-coded instructions of a role, not the mentality of it. A duty's effect on a role's mentality pales in comparison to the impact that the team's overall mentality has. There are far too many combinations of role, duty, and team mentality to go through each individually, but we can break it down into an overview anyway. Regardless of the role chosen, a defend, support, or attack duty will always have the same mentality in each position. An inverted fullback on defend and a wingback on defend will behave differently due to their instructions, but they will always have the same role mentality, regardless of the team's overall mentality. I've put together a chart of the role mentalities you can expect to see in different positions across the different team mentalities. There are no real surprises in this chart, but it does go to show why it's so important to distinguish between a role's duty and its mentality. For example, there is no position on the pitch where a player with an attack duty will have an attacking role mentality if they are playing in a system with a cautious mentality or below. The same applies to the opposite, where even a goalkeeper on a defend duty will have a balanced mentality if they're playing in an attacking or very attacking system. Why don't we put together a tactic and take a look at this in practice? Here, I've set Wonderkid Hoarders Brighton and Hove Albion up in a basic 4-3-3. As an ambitious club looking to consistently challenge for European places, we want to play an attacking, gegenpressing style of football. We'll give Estupinian at left back and Gross in central midfield attack duties, in order to invite them to join the front three during our attacking phases, while Baleba and Veltman will be given support duties, and Billy Gilmore will be asked to sit at the base of the midfield with a defensive duty in order to protect the centre-backs. This looks like a well-balanced tactic, without any obvious flaws. However, if we now look at the tactic again and pay attention to the role mentality for each player, we can start to see how an attacking team mentality affects the balance of the tactic. Despite there being 4 defensive duties in the tactic, there is not a single role mentality below balanced, which goes to show once again the importance of setting the correct team mentality for the situation. Every single player in this side is being afforded license to take a lot of risks relative to their positions, without anybody being told to rein it in and do the dirty work to protect the team. Brighton and Hove Albion are a very good side, but they are not one of the Premier League's elite clubs, and at the highest levels of football, most sides are going to be good enough to exploit and punish an opponent who are too reckless with their risk taking. Let's take a look at the tactic again, but this time with a balanced mentality selected. Immediately, things look more solid. We now have a base of 4 players with defensive mentalities who will be risk averse and protect the side. Veltman at right back and Baleba in midfield are both now balanced, and will complete their instructions without committing too far one way or the other. Going forwards, Estupinian has reined it in slightly, but still has a positive mentality, and therefore will still join the 4 players with attacking duties: Gross, Matoma, Ansu Fati and João Pedro. These 4 players are our game winners, so we want to give them the best chance to succeed by letting them take risks to give us an edge. If we do it with too many players, however, we leave ourselves horribly exposed to mistakes and the repercussions of them. It's important to remember that what we're asking each player to do throughout the game hasn't changed, as their instructions are hard-coded. All that's affected is the amount of risks they will take when following those instructions. For example, Estupinian will still look to get forward and head for the byline to put crosses in. This would be the same no matter what our team mentality is. What has changed is how many risks he will take to achieve this. I'm a big believer in creating tactics that are built around the 3 more neutral team mentalities, as they offer the best balance and flexibility. The more extreme defensive and attacking mentalities absolutely have their place though, and can be used situationally to give the opposition a problem to solve that they just weren't ready for. So what have we learned today? Most importantly, that team mentality has a huge impact on a roles mentality, but they don't always match up in the way you would expect. Team mentality also affects a lot of the instructions you can include in a tactic, and will even lock off instructions that are a contradiction to the mentality. 2 different roles from the same position will always have the same mentality if they have the same duty, but will perform differently due to the hard-coded instructions they have. Role mentalities are a great way to set the build-up shape of a tactic and ensure that there is balance in the side. Choosing the right team mentality is all about risk versus reward, but the most extreme mentalities are generally better to be used situationally, as they're far more difficult to balance. If you've made it to the end of the video, I just want to say thank you. Please let me know down in the comments how you like to use mentality in your tactics, and if you've enjoyed the video, I'd be very grateful for your subscription. Until next time.